Now, okay, so we're back to the 50-year-old. They've got $200,000 that they want to throw into Bitcoin.
Right.
You are specifically looking at Bitcoin from a technical analysis perspective, correct?
Oh, I look at Bitcoin from multiple perspectives, right?
Okay.
So I synthesize information, technicals, fundamentals, macro.
Okay.
That's kind of my brand.
Do you have a price point for Bitcoin in 5 years?
I don't have one in 5 years, but I have as high as 250K by February of next year, and as high as 150K by October.
And that's based on all of your perspectives rolled into one. That's your analysis.
Yes. Right. In other words, I talked to ChatGPT about a couple things, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 17 trillion in US bank deposits. What happens if 1% of that flows into Bitcoin over 6 months? That's like 86K.
Okay.
The pension system's got 56 trillion. What happens if 1% of that money comes in over a 6-month period?
Mm-hmm.
That's, a much higher number. I did something basically saying if a dollar in Bitcoin is better than a dollar in the bank, and there's kind of a parabolic run up in Bitcoin,
mm-hmm.
Like a super cycle or a mini super cycle, for example, and you're like, Bill, what's a super cycle? Well, back in the day in 1982, right, that was the Reagan Volcker bottom,
mm-hmm.
and you had a super cycle for 5 years,
right,
where equities went up 300%. So I'm like, all right, well, let's say Bitcoin repeats that in 5 months, because anybody who's listening to this, let me give you a tip. Whatever it takes equities, especially in historically, whatever it took 5 years in legacy or traditional finance, Bitcoin could do in 5 months. So if Bitcoin pulls an 80s go-go move, and there's going to be an event in October, and there is going to be an event in October, you could be looking at 6-figure Bitcoin by October.
There is going to be an event in October, not by October.
No, in October, just as sure as God made little apples. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the event is going to be?
Okay, well, that's a good question. So the guy who pioneered this analysis, Chris Carlin, wrote a book called The Spiral Calendar. He actually won an award from Barron's in '98 for the paper. I've got the book. So we can break it down as to what happens when you have 2 solar eclipses in 1 year. Okay, you get a crash.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get equities to crash when, one, everyone's already bearish, so bearish they can't see straight. 2, a dollar in stocks minus the banks is better than a dollar in the bank,
mm-hmm.
right? So what would create an event in legacy of the caliber that, like, say, Ray Dalio was betting on? Well, that's got to be like multiple things at once, like 2001. It's got to be a geopolitical event,
mm-hmm.
okay, which is possible, as I discussed. You're going to have maybe a weather event like a hurricane that disturbs gasoline supplies in Houston.
Okay.
And then you're going to have something in legacy that comes out of nowhere. One possibility could be that we find out that every gold bar has 10 owners. And the people who are most exposed to that are the big banks that clear positions for COMEX.
But also